The story of Tyler Edmonds and the tragic murder of Joey Fulgham begins with a web of strained family dynamics, manipulation, and misguided decisions that would ultimately lead to devastating consequences. At the center of this story were 13-year-old Tyler Edmonds and his older half-sister, Christy Fulgham. Their bond, shaped by family ties and Christy's position of authority in Tyler's life, played a pivotal role in the events that unfolded. Christy's actions, motives, and influence over Tyler would set the stage for a crime that shocked their community in Starkville, Mississippi. Joey Fulgham, Christy's estranged husband, was a 27-year-old man trying to navigate a contentious and unraveling marriage. Christy and Joey had 2 children together, but their relationship was marred by conflict. By 2003, they were separated, with divorce proceedings on the horizon. Despite their separation, Joey maintained custody of the children, a decision that Christy reportedly resented. Adding to the tension was the fact that Joey had taken out a $200,000 life insurance policy, an amount Christy stood to benefit from if he were to die. Financial stress and resentment appeared to fuel Christy's desperation, and prosecutors would later argue that she began devising a plan to kill Joey to gain both the insurance money and custody of her children. Christy turned to her younger half-brother, Tyler, to help carry out her plan. As a 13-year-old, Tyler was deeply impressionable and eager to please his older sister. Christy reportedly painted a grim picture of Joey as a violent and abusive man, convincing Tyler that Joey posed a danger to her and her children. Christy's manipulation of Tyler was calculated. She presented herself as a victim in need of her brother's help, using his loyalty and trust to recruit him into her scheme. On May 12, 2003, the plan came to fruition. According to later accounts, Christy and Tyler traveled to Joey's home where the murder occurred. Joey was shot in the chest with a rifle while he lay in bed. The details of the crime itself remain murky, as conflicting accounts from Christy and Tyler complicated the narrative. Tyler's confession, later recanted, would suggest that Christy held the rifle steady while he pulled the trigger. Christy, on the other hand, claimed that Tyler was solely responsible for pulling the trigger. What is clear is that Joey Fulgham lost his life in a senseless act of violence, and the fallout would engulf both Tyler and Christy in a legal battle that would span years. In the immediate aftermath of the murder, Christy's behavior raised suspicion. She attempted to present the crime as the result of a burglary gone wrong, but inconsistencies in her story quickly led investigators to question her involvement. As the investigation progressed, Christy implicated Tyler, framing him as a willing participant in the crime. Tyler, overwhelmed and frightened, was brought in for questioning by police, setting the stage for his eventual confession, a confession that would later be revealed as coerced and unreliable. This tragic series of events highlights the dangerous combination of familial manipulation, financial desperation, and the vulnerability of a child. What began as a fractured family dynamic spiraled into a fatal plan that claimed one life and irrevocably altered the lives of Tyler and Christy. For Tyler, this marked the start of a journey through a justice system unprepared to account for his age, naivety, and the manipulative forces at play in his life. The events leading up to Tyler Edmonds' confession and arrest form one of the most contentious and tragic aspects of his case. At just 13 years old, Tyler was thrust into an unimaginable situation when his half-sister, Christy Fulgham, implicated him in the murder of her estranged husband, Joey Fulgham. Tyler's youth, naivety, and trust in Christy were key elements in the chain of events that culminated in his confession, a confession that would later be scrutinized as the product of coercion and manipulation. According to accounts, Christy had painted a grim picture of Joey to Tyler, describing him as abusive and dangerous. She convinced her younger brother that Joey needed to be killed, framing it as a necessity for her safety and the safety of her children. As an impressionable teenager, Tyler was highly susceptible to Christy's influence, and her words carried significant weight in shaping his perception of the situation. She reportedly manipulated Tyler into believing he was helping her and her children escape harm, further distorting his understanding of right and wrong in the context of the crime. After Joey's murder, Christy implicated Tyler during the investigation. Police brought Tyler in for questioning. and it was during this interrogation that he confessed to the crime. However, the circumstances surrounding his confession were deeply troubling. Tyler was interrogated without the presence of a lawyer or a supportive adult, leaving him vulnerable to pressure from law enforcement. At such a young age, Tyler lacked the experience and understanding needed to navigate the interrogation process. Reports suggest that the police used leading questions and psychological tactics to elicit a confession from him, further complicating the situation. Tyler's confession became the cornerstone of the case against him. In his statement, he claimed that he and Christy had worked together to kill Joey, with Christy holding the gun while he pulled the trigger. However, Tyler would later recant this confession, stating that he had only admitted to the crime because he felt pressured and confused. He described the interrogation as overwhelming and intimidating, an experience that left him feeling as though he had no choice but to comply with the narrative being presented to him by law enforcement. The use of Tyler's confession raised significant ethical and legal questions. Juvenile justice advocates argued that children like Tyler are particularly susceptible to coercion during police interrogations, as they often lack the ability to fully understand their rights or the consequences of their statements. Tyler's case became an example of how confessions obtained under such circumstances can lead to wrongful convictions. The immediate aftermath of Tyler's confession was devastating. He was arrested and charged with murder, a crime he insisted he had not committed. His confession, though recanted, was used to justify his prosecution as an adult, setting the stage for a trial that would profoundly shape his life. For Tyler, this marked the beginning of a long and painful journey through a justice system ill-equipped to handle the complexities of his case and the vulnerabilities of a young teenager caught in a web of manipulation and tragedy. Tyler Edmonds' trial in 2004 was a striking example of the complexities and ethical challenges of prosecuting juveniles in serious criminal cases. At just 13 years old, Tyler was tried as an adult for the murder of Joey Fulgham, a decision that drew widespread scrutiny and controversy. The trial itself became a focal point for debates over the treatment of young offenders, the validity of coerced confessions, and the reliability of the evidence used to secure convictions. From the beginning, the prosecution relied heavily on Tyler's confession to build their case. During his interrogation, Tyler had admitted to shooting Joey Fulgham with Christy Fulgham's assistance. However, the confession was made under circumstances that would later be questioned. Tyler was a vulnerable teenager who, according to his defense, had been manipulated both by his half-sister Christy and by law enforcement during the investigation. His limited understanding of the legal process and his susceptibility to pressure were key factors that complicated the case. Nevertheless, the prosecution presented the confession as a cornerstone of their argument, portraying Tyler as an active participant in the crime. Adding to the prosecution's case was Christy Fulgham's testimony. Christy, who was widely regarded as the mastermind behind the murder, shifted much of the blame onto her younger half-brother. She claimed that Tyler had willingly participated in the plan to kill Joey and had even pulled the trigger. Her testimony was critical in painting a picture of Tyler as a culpable co-conspirator. However, her credibility was undermined by her own motives, namely, her desire to collect Joey's life insurance policy, and her history of manipulative behavior. Despite these factors, her statements carried significant weight in the trial. The defense faced an uphill battle. Representing a 13-year-old in an adult court presented unique challenges, as the jury was asked to consider Tyler's actions through the lens of adult accountability, rather than juvenile immaturity. The defense argued that Tyler had been coerced into confessing and had been manipulated by Christy, who had taken advantage of his trust and naivety. They also pointed to the lack of physical evidence tying Tyler to the murder. No fingerprints, DNA, or other forensic evidence conclusively connected him to the crime scene. However, the emotional impact of the confession and Christy's testimony proved difficult to overcome. The jury ultimately found Tyler guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. The verdict was a devastating blow for Tyler and his family, as well as for those who believed he had been unfairly treated by the justice system. The trial raised significant questions about the ethics of trying juveniles as adults and the reliance on questionable confessions in securing convictions. For Tyler, the verdict meant entering a harsh and unforgiving system as a child, facing the prospect of spending the rest of his life behind bars for a crime he insisted he had not committed. His conviction marked the beginning of a long and arduous battle to clear his name and seek justice in a system that had failed him. Tyler Edmonds' path to justice was fraught with challenges, but the overturning of his conviction in 2007 marked a pivotal turning point in his fight to clear his name. After being convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison at the age of 13, Tyler spent years in a system that treated him as an adult rather than recognizing the vulnerabilities and needs of a juvenile. However, his case garnered the attention of legal advocates who saw glaring flaws in the initial trial. These flaws became the foundation for an appeal that would ultimately lead to Tyler's release. Central to the appeal was the confession Tyler had given during his initial interrogation. Legal experts argued that the confession had been obtained under highly questionable circumstances. As a child, Tyler was particularly susceptible to the psychological pressures of police questioning, especially without the presence of a lawyer or a supportive adult. His later recantation of the confession further underscored doubts about its reliability. The Mississippi Supreme Court reviewed these issues and found that the confession should not have been used so heavily against him in the first trial. This decision led to the conviction being overturned, highlighting systemic issues in the way young suspects are treated during interrogations. The Supreme Court's decision to grant Tyler a retrial was not just a victory for him, but also a significant moment for those advocating for juvenile justice reform. The retrial itself took place in 2008, with a new jury tasked with reevaluating the evidence, or lack thereof, against Tyler. Unlike the first trial, this time the defense was able to more effectively challenge the prosecution's case. Without the confession to rely on, prosecutors struggled to present a cohesive argument. There was no physical evidence tying Tyler to the crime scene, and Christy Fulgham's testimony, implicating her younger half-brother, was seen as unreliable given her own conviction and role as the mastermind of the murder. Ultimately, the jury found that there was insufficient evidence to convict Tyler, and he was acquitted of all charges. For Tyler, the verdict was a long-awaited vindication, but it came after nearly 6 years of wrongful imprisonment. His release was met with relief by his family and supporters, though it was bittersweet given the time he had lost. At just 20 years old, Tyler was finally free, but he was also left to grapple with the lasting impact of being labeled a murderer during his teenage years. The overturning of Tyler's conviction and his eventual acquittal became a case study in the flaws of the justice system. It underscored the importance of ensuring fair treatment for juvenile defendants, particularly when it comes to the use of confessions and the ability to understand legal proceedings. Tyler's retrial highlighted the dangers of basing convictions on questionable evidence and the importance of revisiting cases where justice may not have been served. While the acquittal brought an end to Tyler's legal ordeal, it also raised broader questions about how many other young people may have been similarly failed by the system. The aftermath of Tyler Edmonds' case paints a complex and deeply emotional picture, not only for those directly involved, but also for the broader implications it holds within the justice system. After his release in 2008, Tyler faced the daunting challenge of rebuilding a life that had been abruptly derailed at just 13 years old. Spending nearly 6 years in prison during formative teenage years left a profound impact on him. Returning to society after such an experience meant grappling with the psychological and emotional scars of his incarceration, along with the stigma that often follows someone accused of a serious crime, even after being exonerated. Tyler's journey has been marked by resilience, but the shadow of the case lingers in the background, a reminder of how quickly a life can be upended. While Tyler worked to piece his life back together, the legal and moral questions surrounding his case remained subjects of heated discussion. The fact that a 13-year-old was tried as an adult highlighted the harsh realities of a justice system that often struggles to balance accountability with compassion for juvenile offenders. Advocates for reform have pointed to Tyler's experience as an example of why greater protections are needed for minors in the criminal justice process. His confession, given under duress and without a full understanding of its implications, became a central point of criticism. Legal experts have argued that Tyler's vulnerability as a child, coupled with the pressure he faced from both law enforcement and his half-sister, Christy Fulgham, underscores the need for reforms to prevent similar miscarriages of justice in the future. The case also drew attention to the role of familial manipulation in crimes involving juveniles. Christy Fulgham's influence on Tyler was undeniable. As his older half-sister, she held a position of trust and authority in his life, which she exploited to involve him in her plot. Her subsequent attempt to shift the blame onto him further complicated the case, leaving Tyler as both a victim and an accused. Christie's eventual conviction and placement on death row served as a stark contrast to Tyler's acquittal, but it also left unanswered questions about the dynamics of their relationship and the extent of her responsibility for the tragedy. For the broader legal community, Tyler Edmonds' case became a rallying cry for reform. It has been cited in debates about the reliability of confessions, the treatment of juveniles, and the use of life sentences for children. It also sparked conversations about the need for proper legal representation and safeguards during police interrogations, especially for minors. Though Tyler was ultimately exonerated, the years he lost and the trauma he endured are irreversible. His story serves as a sobering reminder of the systemic flaws that can lead to wrongful convictions, particularly for vulnerable individuals. In the years since his release, Tyler has become a symbol of the need for compassion and reform within the justice system. His case continues to resonate as a cautionary tale, urging society to reflect on how it treats its most vulnerable members and the importance of ensuring that justice is both fair and humane.